A very good morning, class 10 students. I welcome you all on this online platform provided by Jagrati Classes. So we are going to do today chapter 16 part 2 of class 10th. Okay, that is our chapter Management of Natural Resources. And in the previous video lecture we have done about people's participation in protecting forest. Okay, that is how the local peoples involve themselves for the protection of forest. So we have seen it as an example like case study of West Bengal. Similarly, now we are going to study the Chipko Andolan or Chipko movement. Okay, this is also very important part of our history. So what was Chipko Andolan? Firstly, this sort of movement, it is also called as Hug the Trees movement. So it is called as Hug the Trees movement. In this movement, it firstly originated in Raini Garhwal, okay, place present in Himalayas, Himachal Pradesh. So this Andolan or this movement is it originated firstly in Raini Garhwal, and here what happened as when the contractor, a local contractor, he sent his workers to cut the nearby forest. But the villagers who were residing in that forest or near that forest, they resisted that. They said, we will not allow you to cut the forest. So what the contractor did is, when the men of that village, they went out for some sort of work. Okay, so when the men went out for some sort of work, the women's and only in the village women's were present. So the contractor now thought that these women's, they would not resist or they would not be able to control us, okay, and we'll be easily able to cut the trees and we'll get the trees whatever we want. But what these women's did is, when the workers came, when the contractor workers came, they hugged or they clasped the trees so tightly, okay, they said that if you want to cut the tree, you have to cut us also with the trees. And in turn, the trees were saved, the workers and the contractor went back. And in turn, these women, they saved their forest. So this is a kind of movement which originated in Raini. Now, such Andolan spread across worldwide, and it was named as the Chipko movement. So such sort of movement also occurred in a village that is Khejdi, okay, in a village which is approximately 22 kilometers far from Jodhpur, Rajasthan. So in a village also Chipko movement was there. What happened is, one lady which is Amrita Devi. So Amrita Devi Bishnoi, belonging to the Bishnoi community, what she did is, the Maharaja said that I need the forest products, I need the wood from the forest to make my palace. But these villagers, what they said is that in our village, only Khejdi trees they grow because of the environmental conditions. And these trees, they are very important. These are our life because these are required for our survival and even for the survival of our cattle and animals. So they said that on any condition, we'll not provide you to cut or we'll not allow you to cut the forest. But as it was the orders from the Maharaja, so Maharaja said that at any condition you cut the forest and bring the wood to me. And he said to his soldiers that once you cut the forest, these women, all the men and women, they'll get scared and they'll scatter, okay, and then they'll allow you to cut the forest. So what these soldiers did is, all the villagers, Amrita Devi Bishnoi with her 3 children and the remaining villagers, they hugged and clasped the trees, and these soldiers, what they did is, they cut all the villagers along with the trees. So approximately around 363 men, women and children died for protection of forest. And this became a very important part in our history, which shows the participation of people, okay, to save their forest, to save our important resource forest. So now it is called Chipko movement, and every year an award which is Amrita Devi Bishnoi award, it is being granted for all the forest enthusiasts or all the workers which work to save the environment, okay, the forest. So these are some of the movements. Now these are an example of people's participation, how these people are participating for, how they participated for preventing the loss of forest and other natural resources. Now we'll move on to the next, that is water for all. So this is your next part of the chapter, including water, and then you have dams and everything. So let's start water for all. So why water is important? You know, water is the universal solvent and we use water in extremely every work. So water is hence a very important natural resource. So we'll not be writing what are the uses of water. I know all of you can write many points about the uses of water. So water for all means before the Britishers arrived in India, actually we are talking about the pre-British period, okay? Before the Britishers arrived, Indians used many traditional or many cultural ways for irrigation. Because you know, in India, rainfall is irregular. We all know that in most of the parts, that is in the western part especially, you have irregular rainfall pattern. And due to this, Indians cannot just rely on the monsoons or on the rainfall. So for this, many traditional patterns for irrigation. Irrigation is what? Irrigation means the process to water the plants or to water the trees. So for irrigation, what has been done is, many new ways were developed by the villagers and the local people itself. So one example is the kuls in Himalayas. Himachal Pradesh. So what were kuls? You can see in the diagram, parts of Himachal Pradesh have evolved a local system of canal irrigation, which is named as kuls, over 400 years ago. The water flowing in streams was diverted into man-made channels. Let's suppose, I'll explain this with an example, okay? See, we have this as the stream of water flowing, okay? So this is a water stream. Now you have presence of many villages near. So consider that these are some of the surrounding villages present near the stream. So what is being done is, this stream, it is diverted. This stream, canals are made, small canals, and their flow is directed to different regions. So here the same is written, it was evolved 400 years ago. The water flowing in streams, it is diverted into man-made channels which took the water to numerous villages, okay? Because this stream, it is flowing from a hilltop. So it was diverted to enter different villages. Now what happened is, the management of water flowing in these schools was by common agreement. That is, all the villagers, they decide that yes, okay, we will divert it and we'll equally share the water of the stream. Whatever total water it contains, we'll equally share our water with everyone. So what happens is, they also manage that whenever the stream flows, then the village which is present farthest from the stream, it would use this water firstly, because you know, if the villagers coming in between, they will use the water, then it might happen that the stream water may not reach the village, the farthest village also. So they had a common agreement between themselves that firstly the water of the stream would be used by the village which is present farthest from the stream, and then in turn everyone can use this. For this management, these schools were managed by 2 or 3 people, okay? So 2 or 3 officials or the local people were appointed as officials who will manage the flow of stream, who will take care that every villager, every house in each village is getting the water from stream. In addition to irrigation, water from these schools also percolated into the soil and fed up the springs at various points after the kuls were taken over, okay. And so one purpose what the stream is serving is, the purpose is it is supplying water to all the nearby villages. Now these villagers, they also do not use the water excessively. They use only water to fulfill their needs, as I said you. So the water was allowed to flow in the stream Some amount of water was used by the villagers, other water remained in the stream itself. So this water, the water which was remaining in the stream, it allowed it undergo percolation. That is, this water, it seeped down into the ground. It percolated into the ground, and the percolation of water into the ground is very useful because it fills up all the wells, all the nearby wells present in that area. It also recharges our groundwater table. Okay, so these are the sustainable, it is a kind of sustainable management. That is, these villagers, they are using water up to a limit, and this water is also used by nature, that is to recharge the groundwater table level, to fill up all the springs and wells. But after the Kuls were taken over by the irrigation department, that is by the government officials, most of them became defunctional. Defunct means defunctional, okay? They dried up, and there is no amicable sharing of water as before. So once these schools, they were taken over by the government, what was happening is, neither the villagers were getting the required water, neither the nature was surviving well. Okay, what do I mean when I say neither the nature was surviving? Because most of the streams, they became defunctional, they dried up, and there was also no sharing of water at all. So you can see that the more efficiently local people can manage natural resources, with that efficiency the government cannot function, okay, in the management of natural resources. So this is again an example. Now what happened after the Britishers came? See, you can study this paragraph. A study of rainfall pattern does not revolve the whole truth behind the water availability. Rains in India are dependent on the monsoons. This means that most of the rainfall is in the few months of the year, that is in the rainy season only we get the rainfall. So the farmers and we people, we cannot rely on the rainfall because we have to store the water for the whole year itself. So natural traditional practices were done to store the water. That is, despite nature's monsoon bounty, failure to sustain water availability underground has resulted largely from, and when this water was getting depleted or reduced, then there was loss of vegetation, diversion for high water demanding crops, and pollution from industrial effluents and the dissolution of waste in waters. Irrigation methods like dams, tanks, canals have been used in various parts of India since ancient times. And these were made actually by locals. These were managed by the locals and assured that basic minimum requirements for both agriculture and daily needs were met throughout the year. When these dams, tanks and canals were in the hands of local people, then these local people, they assured that each family of that area would get water both for agriculture and for its daily needs throughout the year. The use of this stored water was strictly regulated, and optimum cropping patterns based on water availability were arrived. But when the Britishers arrived, they changed these systems. All these systems they took in their hands, that is, all these systems moved from the local hands to the administration departments, to the government. And then what they did is, they constructed very large dams, that is, large-scale projects like large dams and canals which traverse large distances were conceived and implemented by the British and carried on with no less gusto by our newly formed independent government. So these projects, after the British rule ended and our Indian government formed, they were also on the same steps of the Britishers. That is, they were also not giving all the resources in the hands of local. They also took all the resources with themselves, and they continued building larger dams and building large canals which travel higher or longer distances. These mega projects led to the neglect of local irrigation methods. Government also increasingly took over the administration, leading to the loss of control of the local water sources by the local people. And once these resources, as we have seen, with that efficiency which the local people can manage, the government cannot manage these resources. So what happened is, large dams were built. You know, dams are very advantageous. Yes, dams are good to be built, but up to a limit, up to an extent. These dams, they also cause much hazards. For building dams, you require a big place. So all the peoples residing in the coastal area, wherever a dam is need to be built, the coastal area needs to be vacated. For this, they have to, all the local people living in that coastal area, they have to leave their homes, their occupations, and they have to migrate from that place. And it is very difficult, okay? So building of larger dams, it is advantageous, but only up to a limit, because it serves many other factors are there, okay? Many disadvantages are there too. So you can see, this is a picture of dam. In dam, what happens is, when excess water collects in the dam, yes, these dams are advantageous for generation of hydroelectricity. They are advantageous to store the water. But when the dams overflow and the gates open, the water flows with a very high power in it. And this flow of water, it might cause flood in the nearby regions, okay? And this floods, you all know, it is a natural disaster. It causes much loss to the nearby surrounding people, to their business, to their cattle, crops, everything is being destroyed. So you can see that you have to learn names of some dams which are given, that is Tehri Dam on river Ganga. You must have read about the Narmada Bachao Andolan. What is Narmada Bachao Andolan? About raising the height of Sardar Sarovar Dam, which is built on river Narmada. So remember, the name of dam, Tehri Dam, is built on river Ganga, and on Narmada river you have Sardar Sarovar Dam. And when a proposal was passed by government that the height of this dam should be increased, it was revolted, and the movement was called Narmada Bachao Andolan. So what are actually the problems? Why the people revolt about the dams? So these three problems can be summed up. The problems can be summed up in three different points. First one is the social problems, because I told you they displace large number of peasants and tribal people without adequate compensation. That is, they are removed from their living place, but they are not given constructed houses or anything nearby. So they do not get proper compensation, just they are displaced from that areas. The next is economic problems, financial problems, because they swallow up huge amounts of public money without the generation of proportionate benefits. Because whenever everyone, whosoever is paying the taxes, and in the different taxes which we pay, all that taxes are used for these multi-crores project. And what happens is, all the officials and we know the middle agents, they swallow up most of the money, and now the projects are not built correctly. And because the projects are not constructed in an appropriate manner, we do not get much benefits. In fact, the disadvantages are much higher. The third is environmental problems, because they contribute enormously to deforestation and loss of biological diversity. For building dams, we require a large land area. For that, we are disturbing the human population. In turn, we are also disturbing the plant community and the animals and birds, that is the biological diversity of that area. So in turn, you can say these are the problems or the disadvantages of building dams or any other such kind of projects, okay? Even building canals and all have same kind of problems. So what should be done is, previously, before the Britishers arrived or the local people, they used many types of water harvesting systems with them. So some of the traditional water harvesting systems, their names have been given in your books, okay, you can read it out. One such example is traditional water harvesting system, ideal setting of the Khadin system. So what is Khading? If you can see, this is the area, a hilly slope, okay, catchment area, and this is the cropped area. Cropped area or Khadin we can say. This is a Khadin bund which is being prepared, and it is a shallow dug well. So all the water which comes, it is allowed to get stored. So this Khadin, it is an example of water harvesting, okay. So for water harvesting means storage of water, so that we know rains only occur, monsoons are only for 2 to 3 months in our India. So we need to store water so that we can use that stored water throughout the year. So what can be done is a Khadin system can be done, or you have even heard of rainwater harvesting, which you can include here. Rainwater harvesting is what? At an individual level also this can be performed. That is, all the rainwater should be collected at a cleaner rooftop or anything, and that rainwater through a channel of pipelines, it is stored in a down tank, okay, at a below level tank, and then we can use that rainwater whenever we require. So these are rainwater harvesting. I hope you have read in your previous junior classes. So these are different methods how we can store water, or how this water can be stored and then it can be used at a later time whenever we require it. Do learn the names of water harvesting system given in your books, okay? You have been given, like in Rajasthan you have the creation of tankas, then you can have wells and many other things. So you can learn them. The next is coal and petroleum. So you know coal and petroleum. The first is, you should know how they are formed. Then what is the use of coal and petroleum, okay? And then what are the disadvantages of using high amount of coal and petroleum? Then you can say how can we do the management of these resources, how their management can be done. So the first question is, how are coal and petroleum formed? So these coal and petroleum, you know, these are formed from the dead and decaying remains of plants and animals. When the dead and decaying remains of plant and animals, they get buried in the soil, then after millions of years, due to high pressure and temperature near the earth's crust, wherever they are buried, then due to this, they get converted into coal and petroleum. So coal and petroleum are our fossil fuels. Why these are called fossil fuels? Fossil means dead and decaying remains of plant and animals, and coal and petroleum are generally used as fuel. So you can say that coal and petroleum are the fossil fuels, okay? Now comes their use. So you have enormous use of coal and petroleum. These are used as fuels in cooking, as fuels in vehicles. Then you use coal as a fuel. It was earlier used in steam engines and all. Petroleum, actually petroleum and the word petrol has a different meaning. Petroleum is the crude or the raw material which we are getting, okay? And when this petroleum is sent into the petroleum refineries, so we get 7 different products which are obtained from petroleum. Some of them, if I tell you, then first you get petrol and diesel, they are used, okay? So petrol, diesel, then you get kerosene oil, etc. So some of these are the products which we get from the petroleum, okay? So petroleum, when it is sent to petroleum refineries, then all the products, they get separated, and then you can use these products as the way we use them. So after their use comes disadvantages. So what are the disadvantages of using coal and petroleum? Firstly, we should use them in a sustainable manner, because these are exhaustible resources. That is, they are present in a limited quantity, and if we use them or we exploit them, exploitation means overusing something. So if you exploit these resources, then the future generation would not get to see also these resources, okay? Then the next disadvantage, actually what is now the disadvantages? They are causing much pollution. So these are very polluting resources. Then their efficiency is quite low, because when coal was used as a fuel for cooking, so it produced a large amount of smoke which is causing air pollution. Then that smoke, it is also going inside our body through the respiration or breathing, and then it causes lung diseases, okay? So these are the disadvantage. And what is management? How can we manage these resources? So the management involves judicious use of the resources, using resources in a sustainable manner, okay, and then you should use according to your needs and not according to the desire. Some of the steps are even mentioned in your books, that is you should use a public vehicle, that is the public buses, the government buses, instead of moving around on your individual vehicles. Then you can do carpool, okay. Carpool means if many members are going to a same place, then we can share the vehicle, okay, to go to a same place. So these are some of the steps which we can take to manage these resources, that is for the management of coal and petroleum, because these are very precious as they are limited and they take millions of years to get regenerated. So if we follow all these kinds of steps, then we'll get a cleaner and greener earth, okay. So we have to manage our natural resources. We are the future generations. So if we will not take care of the natural resources, then who will? So do pledge that you all would manage natural resources and take a step forward towards a cleaner and a greener earth, okay. This completes your chapter, that is chapter 16, natural resources. Now I hope this is clear, and with this we have completed our course, that is Class 10 Science course has been completed according to the revised syllabus of 2021. Thank you for joining today's class. If you have any sort of queries, you can contact us anytime. Till then, stay home, stay safe, keep studying. Thank you.